I was
What were you
going
gonna
to say,
say?
I mean, we're not in front of our computer because we're looking at the TV. So if you want to like pull up no bullshit Bitcoin or something, so we have some kind of list.
I've got a list in my mind. Uncle Marty's.
Marty Mine list is always the worst list.
It's a good list. That's a good list. Before we get to my mind list, we're joined by Scott from Bitaxe. He's in Nashville. Big mining event yesterday. How was it, gentlemen? Let's get a recap on what went on in Nashville yesterday.
We had a pretty fantastic host for our panel. We had
Who was that?
it was myself and Econo Alchemist, who represented sort of the smaller mining contingent, and then we had the CEO of Core Scientific,
Adam.
and we had the CEO of Grid,
Yeah, the CEO of
Trey,
and founder Trey.
So they represented just slightly more hash rate than the Bitaxe, but it was an interesting conversation, right? We definitely different points of view, and it was cool to chat about it.
It was definitely a different type of talk.
Yeah.
I asked them all if they thought mempools would clear again.
We're getting close. We're getting close.
Straight cope. I have to refresh the Nostr feed. We don't see it on our side.
12 sats per V-byte.
But yeah, anyway, we had over 200 people at the park yesterday for our mining open house. We really like mining here, so we have 2 months that are dedicated to it. January is the mining summit, and then May is the mining open house now.
Also was Hong from Bitwise.
Yeah, I had Hong on in this room. We did Scylla Dispatch yesterday. That was a great rip. And it was the first time I got to meet him in person, which was awesome. And I did like a little 15-minute fireside with him before the panel as well, which is fucking dope. And he's working out of the 1031 office right now upstairs.
Nice. Hung is very impressive. I did a last trade episode with him a few weeks ago, and I'm happy we have somebody like Hung in the position that he is at Bitwise. He seems down with the cause, pure.
Yeah, it seems like he's in it for most of the right reasons, and of course, contributing to OpenSats, and that's a good deal, man. That's what we like to see.
It really is. I know it's Chatham House rules at Bitcoin Park events as it is here in the Commons, but any interesting details you can share? Insights, alpha, if you will?
On what?
What happened last night?
There was tons of alpha. It was so amazing. I wish I could tell you about it.
Yeah, you had to be there. The parts that can be shared do go on the Bitcoin Park podcast feed. It doesn't include the Q&A, and all panelists are allowed to approve or disapprove. Or you approve of it going on the podcast feed?
Yeah.
I haven't asked the other 3 panelists yet, but I think it'll go up on the podcast feed. While I was getting the Nostr chat ready for us, so we can see it. We see the Nostr chat on the TV with Marty now. Scott mentioned OpenSats. Bitaxe happens to be an OpenSats grant recipient, which I'm pretty excited about.
I'm also very excited about this. It's pretty enabling kind of thing. I don't know. Should we get into it?
Yeah. What's your OpenSats experience like?
Well,
no, let's not make this an OpenSats shill first. What is Bitaxe first? And
look,
we start with Bitaxe.
We have a Bitaxe right here. We're mining.
All right, let's get into it. Scott, why did you start Bitaxe? What is it? And are we going to find a block on this episode?
All right, so Bitaxe it's the first open source ASIC Bitcoin miner in like over a decade. It's a small miner, but we reverse engineered the ASIC, like the chips, out of the Antminer S19 series first, and then the S21 series. So it's got just a single chip, does like 3/4 of a terahash, but the idea is that all the design files are open source, public. You can grab one of these, you can build it, you can grab one of these and start manufacturing them and sell it. You can, probably more exciting, you can grab this and modify it and make a new kind of miner to do some some tasks that you're interested in, whether that's going after stranded energy or, some new mining angle, which some people are doing, which is pretty fantastic. But
So this entire thing is open source.
the entire thing is open source. I mean, the
Is
the
this the
ASIC,
S21 chip or the S19 chip?
that's the S19 XP chip. The 1366 is the model number for that one. Obviously, the chip is not open source because that's Bitmain, but everything else is.
So do you literally just rip this chip off of an existing miner, or?
So the XP chips have been around long enough now that you can actually buy brand new ones that are meant for the repair market.
Okay.
However, the S21 chips in what we call the Bitaxe Supra is the latest model. That's only been out since like January or something, and so there's been thousands of them built, and all of them come from disassembled S21s. Our manufacturers literally buy S21s, don't even plug them in, just take them apart, unstart all the chips, because there's 324 chips in a S21.
So you take an S21 and then you have 324
chips.
Bitaxes.
Yeah.
That's pretty cool.
Which, it works out to like just around $15 a chip, even if you throw away all the rest of this stuff. And so it's worth it to do that.
So over the course of building Bitaxe and getting it to market, what are some of the things that you've learned that may push back on some preconceived notions of how hard it is to develop an ASIC and compete with the Bitmains and MicroBTs of the world?
It's really hard. I mean, to develop an ASIC, like the chip itself, from scratch it's a capitally intensive process. And even if you just have a big pile of money, you still need an incredibly talented team and a long time, and sort of like knowing someone who knows someone to get an allocation at TSMC to make these things. So it's, Block's famously doing it, making a new ASIC to sort of challenge the incumbents in that. But I mean, it started off with just me, so I'm not going to like make my own chip. So I was like, let's just skip that and just start, liberating.
You basically made everything except.
Yeah, I should have prefaced that more. Not obviously not the ASIC, but making a mining hardware device.
Yeah, it's kind of a nerdy thing, but the ASIC application specific integrated circuit technically refers to just the chip itself, but people do like to call the whole machine an ASIC. Yeah, it was a fun project because it involved reverse engineering, because there's no documentation for these chips at all. So everything about the mechanical, size, the footprint of the chip, how to interface it, what the voltage requirements are, all of that had to be backed out from existing undocumented hardware. So that was really fun. I'm kind of into that kind of thing. Spent a long time working on that, but
that's badass.
I think you were asking sort of what was the surprise here. What did I learn? And we sort of ad hoc formulated this Discord group called the Open Source Miners United, where people could just talk about working on this thing. And basically in no time at all, like 1,500 people showed up, including some incredibly talented engineers who are like, oh yeah, I like Bitcoin mining, I want to work on this. And so I've been surprised by just how stoked on this people are, including just amazingly talented engineers of all types who are just like, yeah, I'm in, I want to help. And that's sort of launched this exponential progress on the Bitaxe. Because it was just me, it was slow going, but it's been really cool to see people stepping in and helping out on this, who are like also truly stoked on the mission of decentralizing Bitcoin mining.
Well, that's a good segue into the first topic I have on my mind list,
we need the OpenSats show.
Yeah,
That's been like working for OpenSats. It's been great. It's been awesome.
No, I mean, I want real critique. Are you happy with the experience?
Yeah, it's been fantastic. It took a little while to get the application process, to go through from time of the application to when you finally accepted it. But I realized how it works. It's like all the board is volunteers, and you got stuff going on. So yeah, it happened, and it's been seamless.
That's actually a good critique, because Yours was actually probably quicker than the average.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Yeah, we're a little bit slow, and we need to do better with feedback too.
It's it's been great. Like once I got notified that my project was approved, sort of the paperwork to get paid was minimal. It was incredibly clear. Like a lot of bureaucracy. It's fantastic. And so I had been working on the Bitaxe while I had my full-time day job, and like seriously neglecting my day job because this project was so damn exciting. And so having the OpenSats grant approved was sort of the validation, I guess, I needed in the idea to be like, all right, screw this day job. I'm just going to work on it full time. So
that's fucking awesome.
As of January, I'm working on this, full time, and some associated open source mining projects full time. But I get to wake up every day and work on Bitcoin mining hardware, which is, it's pretty fucking rad.
Yeah, and it's important. Logan, pull up the first link, because this particular point of the conversation is very, what's the word I'm looking for? Applicable to one of the biggest news headlines of the week, which is the fact that the White House issued an executive order for Chinese miners to leave Cheyenne, Wyoming. So long story short, this mining company that is majority owned by Chinese nationals, MineOne, bought and erected a mining facility within a mile of an Air Force base that had nuclear ballistic missiles in it. And as it stands today, there is a process for majority-owned businesses in the U.S., businesses that are majority owned by foreign nationals in the U.S. There are processes in place for them to apply to get approved to actually spin up businesses in particular parts of the country. This goes through an agency known as the Committee on Foreign Investment in the United States. MineOne did not go through this process, so it makes sense to me why the government stepped in with this executive order to say, hey, we have this process, you didn't go through it, you're a mile away from this military base, we are making an executive order, an executive decision to vacate you from the premise. One of the few times I'm going to look at what the federal government's doing and say, hey, this actually makes a lot of sense to me. There's processes in place. They were bypassed. There are strategic military assets that need to be protected. However, if you read the executive order, there are two sections that are a bit alarming, Section D and Section E, and I highlighted them in the newsletter here. And so Section D, CFIUS identified national security risk arising from the transaction relating to the proximity of real estate to Warren Air Force Base, as well as related risk associated with the presence of specialized equipment. So here's the important part. The presence of specialized equipment on the real estate used to conduct cryptocurrency mining operations, some of which is foreign sourced, presents national security concerns. Section E, the proximity of the foreign-owned real estate to a strategic missile base and key element of America's nuclear triad, and the presence of specialized and foreign-sourced equipment potentially capable of facilitating surveillance and espionage activities. Again, not privy to the particular details of the hardware that MineOne was operating. However, if they were just using run-of-the-mill mining equipment, Bitmain machines, transformers that were produced in China, electrical infrastructure, data centers that were produced in China, and the government is labeling these as foreign source hardware that presents national security concerns, that could be a bad thing for the mining industry if they are essentially saying that Antminers, transformers, and data centers that have been bought from Chinese manufacturers are a national security risk. I think it's
fall under that category.
Excuse me?
Like MacBooks and iPhones.
Well, exactly. But that's, considering everything that's happened over the last month in terms of the posturing of the federal government against the industry that we all operate in, things could get hairy.
All electronics are made in China.
Yeah. But I was talking to somebody yesterday and confirmed what they were telling me. If you look at the EV space, the telecom space, and a couple others. I think solar, particularly the federal government over the last couple of years has begun to force those industries to diversify their hardware stack away from Chinese manufacturers. So the point being is, if, again, this is all unknown, this is all speculation, but trying to get everybody's antennae up is if they dictate that foreign manufactured Bitcoin hardware devices, electrical infrastructure, data center infrastructure is a no-go. That's pretty bad for the U.S. mining industry. Pretty much everybody has some extent of exposure to Chinese manufactured goods.
It's unaffordable or impractical to not have Chinese manufactured goods, especially if you're in any kind of electronic industry, and apparently transformers too. Like, where else are you supposed to get that?
Well, and that's what I wrote in the newsletter too, Scott, is like, this is an incredible form of hypocrisy from the U.S. government. If they do go full-fledged, you need to replace all this Chinese manufactured goods, because the reason we're doing this is the way the dollar system's set up. Triffin's dilemma. Like, we went off the gold standard, hollowed out our manufacturing base, and flooded international markets with dollars to drive demand for dollars in exchange for their cheap labor and cheap manufacturing. And so this is literally a product of the fiat system. And now they're just going to be like, oh, national security concern, can't use any of it. It's like, well, you created this problem.
We like couldn't rain down enough tax credits on Foxconn to get them to come over here and build some, some monitors or something. Like, and even in Texas, isn't there a bunch of like tech company towers that basically just unfinished? It's like we cannot tax credit these guys enough to make it work to come here and do manufacturing.
No. And then even if we could, I mean, TSMC is a perfect example. They came, they're trying, and then they're like, all right, we're going to do it. We're going to spend a lot of money. It may not be economical, but we got some geopolitical risk over in Taiwan that we want to diversify away from. But they come here and they have all these DEI requirements. So like, we're just trying to hire the smartest engineers, and you're trying to force us to hire a diverse workforce here that does not compute with what we're trying to do. Clown world.
We won't let them just drain the toxic water into the river nearby or whatever. So it kind of tends to increase costs.
Yeah. The point being, this long round of rant and opening with this topic is, I think it's abundantly clear that there are different layers of centralization within the mining industry. I think obviously the ASICs and the form factors, which those ASICs live within, is highly centralized between two main players. One very powerful player specifically in Bitmain. Scott, what's your perspective on how this plays out? Like, is this level of centralization that we've experienced in the early days of Bitcoin just a product of us being so early? Do you think that there is a path forward in which these centralized areas of the mining stack can become more decentralized? Does Bitaxe play a role in that?
Yeah, absolutely. I feel like I started the Bitaxe just because I'm an electrical engineer and I wanted to do some hardware related to Bitcoin. But it quickly became apparent that this is a gaping hole in Bitcoin. Bitcoin is fundamentally open source. I think Satoshi's first public post on the matter mentioned that it's an open source money. So it's fundamentally open source. Bitcoin mining is arguably the most important hardware in Bitcoin, but it's totally proprietary, totally closed source, and somehow for the last decade we've just been okay with that, trusting without the verifying. So I think that's a big problem. It doesn't necessarily need to be that way. I think when we kind of went from the CPU, GPU, FPGA mining era into the ASIC era, that required a lot of investment. Like we were talking about, I was saying earlier, is that to make an ASIC, tape out an ASIC requires just a ridiculous amount of money. So there's a lot of people who had to take a lot of risk to invest a lot of money to make this happen, and so they just kind of made things proprietary to protect their trade secrets and protect their business, I guess. But it doesn't necessarily have to be that way. I think Block is kind of showing that, you can just sell the chips. Like, we're buying these chips from Bitmain, and they're making money off it, and potentially more money than they would without Bitaxe. Obviously, it's really small right now, but it's incredibly important to have this open source, in my opinion, because so that we can know what's going on, and we can see just how this is working. Right? There was the drama a few years ago about ASIC boost, and Bitmain had kind of like snuck in this secret functionality in some of their chips, and they were just kind of keeping that to themselves and not telling anyone.
And bleed.
Yeah.
As well.
Yeah, exactly. So there's been these things, and if we had more people paying attention to this, more insight into how they work, we'd be more clued into how those things work. I just maybe real quickly, I think that there's several people talking about how Bitcoin miners need to get more creative to deal with rising difficulty and energy prices. Right? They need to find cheaper energy to survive in Bitcoin mining, and so that kind of involves some creativity in going after different sources of energy that are cheaper, mining closer to the source, mining maybe on intermittent stranded energy, flare gas, all that good stuff. And at the same time, I think we're seeing the efficiency improvements of these chips start to taper off. So like each new revision is it's an increase in efficiency, but it's not as much as we've seen in the past. So that kind of compounds the effect, and people have to get more creative to make Bitcoin mining work. And so I think we're going to see miners, the design of Bitcoin mining hardware, go from just being, the S19 form factor that just plugs into the grid and they're all kind of the same and they're all meant to do exactly that, just sort of changing the form factor, the power requirements, the control of it to more efficiently use these other applications. And that is kind of partly what I want to enable with open source Bitcoin mining development, is that if you have this crazy idea for a new type of miner, you don't have to start at zero. You can just start with this design and run with it, and we can just improve that much faster.
Matt, feel free. I feel like this is like the like a TFTC where I'm like interviewing you, but I think so.
I'm
Matt,
enjoying.
Jump in whenever. But for the layman out there who may not be familiar with how these miners work, what does the open source stack look like? What type of functionalities would somebody looking to build on this open source project get out of the box?
One of the big sort of obvious things is the firmware. That's essentially software that runs on the machine that that controls how the miner works, that connects to your pool over Stratum, downloads work, sends it out to the chips. Right now, back in the day, we had Brains, which was open source for a little bit, and then they canceled that. So basically, right now, we don't have any open source firmware, and that's definitely a thing we want to keep an eye on how that works to make sure that no fishy business is happening there. But there's a lot of room for improvement. That's something that's open source. We call it ESP Miner. That's something that's open source on the Bitaxe, is the firmware. So you can dive into that. There's all sorts of cool things you can do there. Going sort of down the stack towards the hardware, we have the whole. You can think of it as like a control board, right? That has the ASIC on it, and the power delivery circuit. There's all sorts of neat things you can do there. I was talking to Adam from Grid, and they characterize all the machines they get, right? They order them from Bitmain, and then they just go into this characterization process to figure out, can I overclock this? Do I have to underclock that to deal with all the, the insane fleet they have? And so with the Bitaxe, you can actually dive into that on a pretty granular level to really figure out the performance of your individual chip and what you can do to overclock it. If you need to cycle the hash rate up and down, some cool things you can do there. And then you asked about the stack. So going the other way, the control board then the firmware talks to a pool over Stratum. There's been a lot of buzz lately about Stratum v2, so there's a lot of opportunity there to incorporate this new type of Stratum. Bitaxe, we had a demonstration here at the park 2 nights ago. A guy, Brian, showed one of the first, I think, implementations of Stratum v2 and he had his Bitaxe there, like in front of the crowd at BitDevs, showing it off. But yeah, he had Stratum v2 working, on his Bitaxe. So that's some kind of fun poolside development there. A lot of interest in the community in having that. And then how do pools operate? And there's just a lot of drama lately about pool centralization, and I think there's a lot of things you can get into there. They aren't necessarily specific to the Bitaxe, but it's an interesting way to try those things out in a very open way, where you can see how it's open source. You can see how the whole stack works and how your changes affect your mining performance.
Yeah. And then outside of alternative use case for individual miners in terms of just controlling hash rate, power draw, whatever it may be, obviously a big trend has been using ASICs, the waste heat specifically, to do things like warm the water in a hot tub, warm your house. Obviously, Bitaxe in its current form, 1 chip on each thing. Maybe it's not the size there, but you see in the future maybe offering like a beefier product that would enable stuff like that.
We've got several beefier products in the works coming out of the Open Source Miners United. We've got a 2-chip variant, a 4-chip variant, a 16-chip variant, a 6-chip variant.
Do you have a 324 chip variant?
Yeah, I think we're going to call it the S21. It's going to be a huge. We'll call it the S22. So actually, onto that front there's a bunch of people, not necessarily the OSMU, but the pleb miner crew that are looking at using single hash boards from S19s or S21s, because it comes with 3 hash boards. 3 hash boards is about 3,000 watts, which is a little bit much for use in the home. So people are looking at doing single hash boards, 1,000 watts, much more.
So that's like 100 chips.
Yeah.
Most importantly, you can plug it into a power supply unit that you can plug into your house.
You don't have to unplug the dryer.
Yeah. It's much more manageable. It's cheaper, right? Because you only need to buy one of them. But what I was going to say on that is, through the process of reverse engineering the chips in these for the Bitaxe, we've figured out how to interface with these chips, and it carries over to interfacing with the Antminer control boards. And so, part of OSMU, there's been an effort to make a open source control board. So, every Antminer has a control board that goes on the top of it. That's closed source, proprietary. There's a bunch of companies that make third-party firmwares, but those are also closed source. So if you wanted to, let's say, modify the firmware on that control board to talk to the thermostat on the wall because you're using this thing to heat your house, it's kind of a pain in the ass. It's a roundabout process just because you don't have any access to the firmware that the miner is running. So we're working on open source firmware for Antminers and this control board, and that kind of opens up, I think, a pretty interesting host of possibilities of you could have it control, talk to the temperature sensors in your hot tub. If you're making a hash tub like Schnitzel, super rad. You could have it talk to the, thermostat on the wall. Actually, kind of the sky's the limit there. We're using a Raspberry Pi to do it because there's this huge ecosystem on Raspberry Pi of just interfacing with
home hackers.
Yeah, home hackers. And so, why not do it?
Yeah. I mean, we're very early in terms of the journey towards that sci-fi future where everything's interacting with, bringing back like the Internet of Things meme, which I thought was a terrible meme, but you could see, you can, if you squint hard enough, you can see that the groundwork is being laid to enable that type of sci-fi future.
And, it's not a stretch to think like, oh, this, Bitcoin miner he is definitely useful for heating my house or the room or whatever, and it's great because it pays me back for some of that heat. So it makes perfect sense when you think about it. But then kind of the downside is all like 100% of the miners out there are not meant for that purpose. They're meant for use in a data center. So you're hacking it to do this. Like a good example is like, it's a bummer to have to plug an Ethernet cable into your space heater. Like, to do that, you're like, oh cool, like roll this space heater into the other room, like it's cold in there, like, oh wait, I gotta roll my Ethernet cable in there. And it's a side effect of this equipment is not meant for that. So I think that's what these projects can help spearhead, is custom made miners and hashing equipment that's for this purpose.
Yeah, so the Bitaxe, for instance, uses Wi-Fi.
Yes.
He plugged it in and he just set it up with his phone. Super easy. Boom, done.
Just like one of these Netis things. I've got my 21Co mining machine here.
Oh, nice.
He paid a Bitcoin for that novelty.
Thanks, sir. Thanks for doxing my purchase. But yeah, like this Netis Wi-Fi thing. It's the
We've
USB.
never talked about it on our job before.
That's awesome. See, people are going to buy this stuff.
I mean, that was a horrible investment.
No, it wasn't. It was a great. I learned a lot. I learned how to interact with CLI, how to connect to a pool, all that stuff. It was cool.
It's got a space on your shelf there.
He had Balaji on, and they talked for 3 hours, and he didn't give him any shit about.
I did before the episode. I didn't want to focus on 21Co.
About that miner. But yeah, that's like the original Bitaxe.
Yeah.
But that was all,
yeah.
I think.
Well, I think it's a great example. Matt, you and I talk about this off air a lot, but I think timing is everything in this market. And what 21Co was trying to do back in 2015, 2016, great idea, just too early. They were trying to enable what they call the machine payable web, where
it was pre-Lightning.
Yes.
Yeah.
Pre-Lightning, and then
mining, like the mining production cycle just hadn't quite got there yet. Like there was no real maturation in terms of, like, hardware went obsolete way too quickly, I feel like, to put a miner in a toaster.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And now the timing is more opportune to bring something like Bitaxe to market.
Or if you wanted to make your hash toaster, right, you could just start from this and not have to like start at zero.
I mean, yeah, I think the coolest part is, I mean, we talk about the power of open source all the time, and the confluence of hardware and open source, right, is you just end up in this situation where it's you have this viral project that has thousands of contributors around the world, and Scott doesn't have to think of everything, right? It's you build the base, and then it kind of just grows like an organism and just has a mind of its own, which is kind of fucking cool.
And you can't like turn it off.
Yeah, it's pretty awesome. And I love that you're able to leave your job and do this full time. That's really fucking cool.
Me too, man. It's still like seems like a dream. This is so cool.
So what are
Bitaxe isn't set up through a phone app to the comments. It's just through like a web browser, right?
Yeah, exactly. It's got a little dashboard. I mean, if you've ever set up any other miner, it's a very similar idea. Just you go to the Bitaxe's IP address, you can configure it.
Like it has a little screen on it, and it shows the IP address on the screen, and then you just put that in your browser, and it pops up.
It's actually having the screen
up the block lock
is kind of insane. Like no one does that. I think like Dezoe did it briefly. I don't know what happened to those guys, but like even in a big farm, like figuring out the IP of the miner you just plugged in is insane. Like there's a little button in some software you can run in Windows to do it, but it's like just a little screen. That screen's super cheap. Just says the IP address on the front.
It is, I mean, to that point, it is crazy still, even on the industrial side of the mining industry, how early you are. Because I mean, that was working with Tom to plug it. Like, he made it a point for me to come out and plug in my personal miners and do all the networking, which is a great experience. But like, yeah, like you said, like going into like the stock firmware and connecting to a pool, putting in all that information, it literally looks like a 1990s like SCADA instance. It's like, there's got to be a better way.
Yeah, and it like That's the cool thing is I'm probably not going to come up with a better way, but we've got some contributors. Like there's a guy, Ben, who just showed up and made us this fantastic looking dashboard. He's like,
A dude named Ben.
dude named Ben. Ben is actually a dude is a genius. He just showed up and was like, I've never really soldered before. I kind of want to make a Bitaxe. And I'm like, okay, here's like some vague instructions. Comes back a couple days later. He's like, I made 3. They're working great. I was like, wow, dude, impressive. He's like, yeah, I think I'm going to get like this $25,000 pick and place machine and start an assembly line in my basement making Bitaxes. He shows this picture of a crane lowering a pick and place machine. And he's got this whole like assembly line in his basement. And the dude has made thousands of Bitaxes.
Holy shit.
Yeah. He's like, yeah, I'm a software guy.
Is that who Gary bought these from?
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, it's exciting.
Yeah.
What in terms of priorities, near term, medium term, now that you have this grant locked down, what are you thinking?
There's been a lot of sort of push to do a higher hash rate miner. Half terahash, or depending on what version you get, 3/4 of a terahash it's pretty paltry. So we're gonna bump that up. Just be over 1 terahash in the super near term. That's coming real soon. I do, however, I don't want to go into the like tens of terahash. Right when we start to approach Bitmain Ant miners, we can't compete with them. I mean, obviously, we're buying the chips retail, from them, so we can't compete with them. So I want to stick with this.
What is an S9? Is an S9 like 10 terahash?
Yeah, like 14, 12, 14 if you're all out.
Okay.
It is, however, it's like the Bitaxe has over 3 times higher efficiency
in terms of power use.
Yeah. I think it's like 100 watts per terahash on the S9, and we're sub 20. So
yeah, if it's an S19 XP or 20
those
watts
were like
or
one. This is the S20. Well, not this one, but our latest one, the Supra, has got the S21, which I think they were like
17 and a half.
Yeah. So we get that too. So, where was I going with that? Oh, so yeah, I want to stay to this home miner, the small miners, but I want to reduce the cost a lot, right? So it's just a no-brainer to get. It's a novelty, but it shouldn't be expensive. And if it's cheap enough, there's lots of people who like buying novelties.
It's a really good way to learn.
It's a good way to learn, and the hash rate does add up. So the more people we can get to buy these novelties and plug them in,
Well, I think the cool part is kind of what we were talking about earlier, is like what comes next, and you can't really fathom what that is, but there's multiple ways that this can be incorporated in a home environment at a higher hash rate that is still pretty efficient.
Yeah.
And like this is just like this is the first rock that's thrown, right? It's like the beginning.
No, and to this point, like, have you run the numbers on what it would take, like how much adoption of, like how many people would have to adopt Bitaxes to make a material dent in hash rate that would give people peace of mind knowing that it's somewhat distributed amongst individuals?
So for easy numbers, let's say we have a 1 terahash Bitaxe. We're at 3/4 right now. We could, with 2 chips, we would exceed that. But let's say 1 terahash. So an exahash is 1,000,000 terahash. So if we sold 1,000,000 of these 1 terahash Bitaxes, then we'd have an exahash. And if all those people are solo mining, then one of those Bitaxers would solve a block right now on average every 4 days, and get the full. If they're solo mining, they get the full block reward, and then hopefully they go and post on Nostr about how rad this is, that they just got. I don't know, was that like a couple $100,000?
Well, hopefully they change the default address so it doesn't just go to you.
I mean, don't let me tell you what to do. So yeah, I think 1,000,000. That's a lot, but it's not impossible.
That's pretty cool.
And as we start to approach
like ocean, there's some ocean shaming in the comments. I'm sorry.
That's all right. It happens. And this, once we start solving blocks, as far as I know, no Bitaxers solo mined a block yet, but it will happen. Once that starts happening, that sells the next 1,000,000. And then, once we're getting exahash, then it's real. I mean, that's a non-trivial amount of the network hash rate.
Yeah.
Especially
Somebody in the comments is saying better than the lottery, which is true. So imagine like it's a lottery ticket that helps you subsidize some costs, maybe somewhere in your house, or create some efficiencies in your house, and then you have the potentially win a block reward at some point down the line.
I looked at the California State Lottery, so they have like a 4 of 5 prize, and your odds every day with a Bitaxe are better than that prize on the California State Lottery, and the payout is more. So it's like one in 6 million chances per day of solving a block with a single Bitaxe, and so better than the state lottery. And if
low bar.
Yeah, very low bar. Bullshit. Don't get me wrong.
It's better than the state-sponsored scam.
Yeah. Well, and if you win the lottery, the first thing to do is to take half of it for taxes, and so at least with the Bitaxe, if you win, it's up to you. And if you leave it plugged in, it's like buying a ticket every day.
Yeah. Subsidize that cost over many years. Relatively cheap lottery ticket.
Yeah,
or not subsidize, amortize that cost. Yeah, this is fascinating. I'm happy that Matt Ninja launched me into a party rip with you, Scott.
Yeah, Marty didn't know Scott was joining until like 2 minutes before we went live.
No, like
4 minutes. No.
Yeah, the timing's perfect. As I was telling you before we hit record, I was literally talking about Bitaxe with Matthew Mazinchus yesterday on TFTC. Yeah. So
I asked Scott to join like half an hour before the podcast.
Yeah, it's all good. Happy to be here. Thanks for having me, you guys.
Thanks for joining us. Should we jump into some other topics?
Do you have anything good?
I got a nice white pill. Let's play the video. Let's have a little laugh.
Usually it's bad when Marty says
the children are beginning to complain about inflation. I just thought this was one of the funniest videos on the internet yesterday.
Girls, what's just happened?
So, there's an ice cream van there selling just 2 ice creams with 2 chewing gums in it.
Yeah.
For bloody £9 for 2 of them.
£9 for 2?
Yeah, £9. That is going to get nowhere. The one that comes on my street is either £1 a p or £2. That is going to get nowhere with that.
No, he ain't, is it?
No, he ain't.
That's well bad, isn't it?
You should know. And he only does bloody card. Stood there with my cash. Bloody hell.
That's well bad, isn't it?
Bloody well bad.
Yeah.
Yeah, bet he can hear me.
The kids are starting to notice inflation.
She should launch a podcast better than McCormick.
Well, Matt, I brought this up specifically because I don't know if you caught it. Obviously, she was complaining about the price of 2 ice cream cones, £9 for 2 ice cream cones. But she also mentioned he only takes cards. I was sitting there with my cash. He wouldn't take my cash.
Man.
So she's complaining about inflation and cashless society all once. The kids are all right.
Don't post your children on the internet.
Yeah. Come on. You can't have a good laugh.
I mean, I look down on parents that TikTok their kids.
That is an epic video, though.
But yeah, she's hilarious. I'm sure she got really good engagement off of that.
I certainly have, so. Cashless societies, inflation. My wife, right before we came on, sent me a text. Our auto buy of sponges every month from Amazon came today. In the box, instead of 3 sponges, had 2. Same price. She's not happy about it. Shrinkflation is here as well. Getting more prominent. Scott, this is what Matt likes to do. If he doesn't like something I say, he'll just sit there in silence and wait for one of us to break.
I mean, I got nothing. That is the money is dying.
The money's dying.
If you don't read Mandibles, you live it. That's what happens.
I was trying to get to like more white pill, funny, lighthearted stuff. But since you don't seem interested in that, let's go to the black pill.
We were like prepping RHR, and I was like, Marty was just like typing into his phone feverishly, and I was like, "Are you like setting up the list or whatever?" Because I didn't make a list. He's like, "No, I'm just tweeting about sponges."
Black pill, more serious topics. Tornado Cash. Dutch court ruled. This is actually pretty insane ruling. But Alex Petrov, one of the co-founders of Tornado Cash, had his case in front of the court, and the judges, like I think it was a council of judges, decided to rule against Alex and put him in jail for 5.5 years. And the justification for that was that he had the knowledge that if he were to launch this software into the wild, it could be leveraged by criminals, and so the knowledge of that potential use case was enough to find him guilty of money laundering. And the Dutch court,
they basically said shipping code that you know is unstoppable is a choice, and you're liable for that choice.
Mhm.
This is such an obvious, just like chilling effect on all development, right? Like all open source.
I mean, that's the point, right? That's why they do it.
Yeah.
Make an example, scare the rest of the people.
Yeah. And I'm sure everybody's talked about it. But again, for anybody who hasn't heard of this and you're wondering, like, oh, well, like money laundering, man, like maybe you shouldn't launch this unstoppable code. It's like, it's akin to going after a hammer manufacturer for manufacturing hammers, knowing that somebody could take that hammer and bludgeon somebody's head in with it, like they're guilty for enabling that murder. Hammers don't kill people. People kill people.
Yeah, I mean, Weirdo Robot in the comments is exactly right. This is a tactic that governments have attempted to use against gun manufacturers for years now.
Yeah. And that's where guns don't kill people. People kill
And just to make it a little bit more confusing, so yes, this happened in Netherlands. So in the Netherlands, there's there's a gut reaction of saying like, oh, like if you're an open source contributor, don't be Dutch or don't be in the Netherlands. By the way, the Netherlands has an incredibly strong Bitcoin community. It's one of the coolest things was when I went to Bitcoin Amsterdam, and it was just a whole different group of people than you see at other events because they were all locals. Their community is incredibly strong. But one of the Tornado Cash developers is also being tried in the US. And that's the case where the DOJ came out and said that just because something's self-custody doesn't mean it's not a money transfer business. And that's where all those memes came out of like, oh, that means like a USB cable, so money transfer business, or your aunt giving you a check and a birthday card, like the birthday card's a money transmitter. And that is also what Senator Lummis and Senator Wyden, bipartisan letter to the DOJ, argued against, that this broad expansion of scope of what is a money service business to include clearly self-custody tools is just not in line with current rulings from FinCEN.
No, selective enforcement, selective interpretation. Like you said, Scott, very obvious chilling effect. Which begs the question, how do we react to these advances from these varying governments?
I mean, like open sourcing it and decentralizing the development of it helps sort of make at least the targets on our backs smaller, or harder to go after, more whack-a-mole, I guess.
I mean, the scary thing here is in both the Tornado Cash and in the Samurai case, these are open source developers on open source projects, specifically developers writing code that is fully self-custody and doesn't actually take ownership of funds, and holding developers liable for their speech, which, their code, which is speech, which is incredibly dangerous precedent. It's bad for the country in America, and it's bad for the country in the Netherlands. I think it's bad for the world. I think so. But in both cases, these are developers that tried to monetize their open source projects. We'll see if that could just be convenient for them. I don't know if it necessarily stops if you don't monetize your project. If you ship a powerful enough tool, they might make an example out of you regardless, even if you don't monetize your project. I mean, there's a reason why Satoshi was anonymous, but I would also push back a little bit on people just throwing out there like, oh, like people should just pull a Satoshi. Like, it's incredibly impressive what Satoshi pulled off. Very few people could ever pull that off, particularly if one of the big, large surveillance states is trying to get you. It's very difficult to do. So I think, I think that we can learn a lot from the early cypherpunk movement, and that's really that there's not a one size fits all approach. I had the pleasure of having Adam back on Citadel Dispatch, and we talked about this at length because he was a key element of that fight. And so basically, what I think, like, the core of what we can learn from them is, first of all, open source code is greater than any individual, right? So if you kill that individual, you put them in jail, something like that, it doesn't stop the project. The code outlives any person. It's not owned or controlled by any person. And it's viral in nature, so it'll continue to grow and improve and iterate over time from contributors around the world. And then second of all, there is a legal and political part of that battle. And you kind of have to fight it on two fronts. That's the only way to do it, because at the end of the day, we live in a world that is dominated by rulers. And if you just ignore them and don't fight on both those fronts, you're going to end up in a world of hurt.
Agreed. I'm sorry that Snotty Bent interrupted you there. Really couldn't hold it back anymore. Fighting the family.
I think there'll be a good announcement next week, at least on the legal side. So we'll see.
Won't push any further there. Speaking of good announcements or good things to see, seems like the politicians here in the United States specifically have responded to the groundswell of displeasure in terms of how they're positioning and posturing against Bitcoin in the United States. And this bill that only a week ago was deemed to be passed through the Senate without any problems, actually got voted down today. And this was, I think, the SAF-B bill that would enable banks to custody Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies. Not really interested in the outcome of this bill particularly, but I do think the changing of the wind and the Democrats, particularly here in the United States, noticing that people are not happy with how they've been posturing against Bitcoin and broader crypto, is a positive signal that there is, they know that this is a contingent of Americans that care deeply about Bitcoin. Again, I hate saying it, but crypto more broadly, and they are beginning to notice. So who knows how that affects any legislation or what's the word I'm looking for? Legislation or criminal accusations that happen moving forward.
Political persecution.
Yes, political persecution. There we go. Thank you.
Sorry, so this being struck down means banks can hold Bitcoin on their balance sheets?
I think this was a bill to explicitly say that they can't. So
it's not for them holding it on their balance sheets. They want to be able to
custody
hold it.
Oh.
And so the way it's currently set up, they have to hold, if they hold one Bitcoin for a customer, they have to hold the equivalent amount in dollars. So it's like it's not just full reserve. It's double full reserve.
Double full.
Which and meanwhile they're sitting here and they're like, and this is just straight up financial incentives, right? They're sitting here, they're like, why does BlackRock get to hold billions of dollars and take fees off of it, and we're being cut out of that pie?
Well, technically, BlackRock doesn't custody that though.
Was it Coinbase?
Yeah, I mean the banks will probably keep it with Coinbase too. And your local Wells Fargo is not going to have like a treasurer in the vault.
Yeah, I guess. Yeah, I'm thinking through the legal structure of the ETFs is ETFs holding the assets custodied with Coinbase, so it'd be similar.
Yeah.
What else happened? In terms of tech updates, unless you have anything to add on the political front, this was pretty cool to see this week.
I have one. What did you do next?
Pull it up, Logan. So, I forget what this is called. Boardwalk Wallet.
Boardwalk.cash, I think.
Yeah, Boardwalk.cash dropped on the Cashew protocol, and it is an implementation of stable channels within an Ecash mint on top of Cashew. And essentially, this is something we've been talking about for a couple of years now, which is this idea that you should be able to replace stable coins that are backed by dollars and treasuries with synthetic stable coins backed solely by Bitcoin. And the Boardwalk Cash team launched their product built again on Cashew protocol the other day, and they're solving this problem with stability channels on the Lightning Network. So the way it works, to the best of my knowledge, is you're able to create stable value in this mint. You put your sats in, you say, hey, I want to create $5, $2 in this case worth of stable value within this mint. And then within the stable Lightning channel, you basically have two sides. Somebody who thinks the price of Bitcoin is going to go up, and so they put an amount of sats in, and then you are the other side of that. You want stable value. The price of Bitcoin goes down. Say the price of Bitcoin goes up, and you want to get your sats back. At that point, let's say it goes, you will get your sats back, but they will be less than what you put in, obviously, because the price went up, and you basically took risk off the table and said, I want stable value instead of free floating sats.
It's not the user doing this. It's the custodian.
The channel manager. Yeah.
So at the end of the day, this opens the door for dollar-denominated eCash that's backed purely by Bitcoin. The custodian who's offering you this dollar balance is inherently exposed to the price of Bitcoin instead of the user being exposed to the price of Bitcoin. And they can choose how they want to hedge that risk, whether that's stable channels, whether that's DLCs, whether that's, holding treasuries like Tether does. Or they could just say, fuck it, and they can over collateralize in Bitcoin and just hold Bitcoin and take the price risk and just be like, nah, I'm a degen custodian and I just want to go long Bitcoin. And I think I can withstand any downward pressure. So this opens up this kind of world of private banking, competitive private banking that Hal Finney theorized many, many years ago in the early days of Bitcoin. But it's important to realize, with the benefits of private banking, competition and access, and in eCash's case, privacy for the users, also comes, the wild west of private banking, which is there will be many rug pulls.
Yes. And I think what the Cashew protocol is doing to mitigate this, or at least I've seen Callie say, like, he wants many small mints. He thinks the best path forward is a bunch of small mints, and you limit
many mints.
Many mints. You limit the amount of risk that can be taken, or the amount of money that any one individual user can actually put into the mint.
Yeah, I mean, there's like three key concepts here. First of all the mints are connected to each other with Lightning. So you can move between the mints or pay any Lightning invoice or receive from any Lightning wallet relatively easily and instantly. And then you have this idea of a simplified UX, like a single app that allows you to see balances across many mints, right? So it's not like you have to like keep switching between them. And you can actually use multi-part payments on Lightning to actually pay an invoice that gets sourced from your balances in multiple mints. So like you're not like manually transferring them around. An additional piece there is this idea of like a Nostr enabled censorship resistant, like almost trust pilot, right? A web of trust where you can rate mints on reliability, payment reliability, rug risk, stuff like that. So you can see like friends or people you trust or respect, what are they thinking, to try and have some kind of like competitive rating system when you're choosing. And then last but not least, he has a spec for proof of reserves and proof of liabilities. It is a little bit above my pay grade. I don't exactly understand how that gets calculated or how that's verified. And even if one of these mints is full reserve, doesn't mean that tomorrow they just walk away. But it does help. It helps mitigate that silent inflation risk. This idea that the mint operator is consistently just printing tokens that you don't know about. And then so that's the Cashew protocol, which is inherently a single mint, like a single sig mint, a single custodian.
Yeah.
And then you have
Pull up the
Fedimint on top of
latest
that.
link.
And Fedimint tries to reduce the risk by making these mints multi-sig. So you need multiple parties to come together. I will say, like, we're going to talk about regulatory overreach and regulatory burden. These mint operators are in a could, especially if they find any kind of success and have large amounts of money, they could become regulatory targets relatively easily. I think if anyone's paying attention, they would think that's the case. So, and the answer to that a lot of people say is like, oh, well, they should just pull the Satoshi, which once again is easier said than done. So, well, we'll see how it plays out and like who runs these mints, how big these mints get. I will say that Lightning Gateway portion, like the portion that like actually allows the mint to interoperate with the rest of the world, it is very difficult to run a large Lightning node anonymously. There's a lot of ways to fuck up your privacy. So these are all things that people should be thinking about. There is situations where there might actually be like KYC, AML fully regulated. And I've seen Callie argue that a mint like that might be compliant under law, but still
Pull up the Peter
provide
Todd tweet.
quite good privacy and better guarantees to the user than a traditional KYC AML custodian, even if it's not the full-on cypherpunk dream. So these are all things that people should keep in mind.
Agreed. And to that point, I mean, I wanted to bring up this topic specifically, so happy that you did. I mean, I saw this earlier on Twitter, Peter Todd quote tweeting the Cashew protocol about this particular topic of adding the ability for mint operators to authenticate users into existing KYC and AML infrastructure. So I think diving into the optionality of this particular offering, and I think Peter bringing up good points. Let's not be the first to rush to AML, KYC. Proactive compliance with tyranny is immoral. If these regulated entities can't use your product, so be it. I think, again, these are open source protocols, optionality. I don't know. I'm still trying to decide how I feel about this.
Yeah, I mean, I think from Callie's perspective, it's not all or nothing. It's about giving optionality to whoever's running the custodians. I think one of the cool parts about the Cashew protocol in general is that it makes it easier for people to run custodians. it has not been historically like easy to compete with like a wallet of Satoshi or something. You can't just like one click deploy a wallet of Satoshi competitor. And so if you go down that path, one thing that some people might want is ways to authenticate their users, and they can choose how they want to do that. And obviously, if you go all the way down that rabbit hole, it's your incredibly burdensome KYC. But also, like if you start at the beginning of that, um, what if you just want to run a mint for a small town, and you don't want anyone outside of the town to be part of the mint? Like in the era of the internet, that is easier said than done. So I could see worlds where certain operators want different types of authentication, and that authentication could be as simple as some kind of password or something like that, some kind of shared secret that only community members know.
Yeah. And I mean,
Yeah.
going back to the original implementation of Ecash systems, Chalmine Ecash, I mean, it was originally implemented into the traditional banking system with full KYC AML. And the problem there is like you had to ask permission to operate these Ecash systems with particular banks. And I think what the beauty of Ecash on top of Bitcoin is that it's permissionless, and you, like you mentioned, have this optionality to add and remove features that you deem completely necessary for the product and service that you're trying to provide. I mean, I do agree with Peter Todd as well. It is immoral. Are you bending the knee by doing this? I think as long as it's open source, opt-in only, it's not.
Which it is.
Yeah.
I mean, I think Callie wants to see a world where like you press a button or you press a couple buttons, you run a command, and like you have a new mint set up, and then like you have like a configurable, like you have different options, and you can choose what type of mint you want to run, what parameters you want enabled, what you don't want on. And to me, that makes complete sense to me. That it's up to the person who's taking the risk and the liability and the burden of running the actual mint. But if Peter is willing to run a no KYC global, cashew mint, like that would be great.
Yeah.
That sort of one click spin it up, anyone who's even remotely interested in setting this up for their community or their family or whatever, like that's the way it needs to work, because you can't shut all those things down and even know who's doing it all.
Yeah, I mean, I like the idea of like a GUI, like you have like this nice graphical user interface and you can just choose your parameters.
Yeah, people will figure it out, right?
Yeah.
Like people set up all kinds of websites for whatever ridiculous idea they have, like figure it out.
Yeah. In terms of this, oh, sorry, Scott.
I was just gonna say once it's out there, like you can't turn that off.
No. And bringing it back to the particular use case within these mints of stable channels, stability pools, whatever is implemented, what are your thoughts on the potential for these things to disrupt the highly centralized stablecoin markets?
I think nothing's going to really disrupt Tether unless Tether blows up or starts censoring even more than they're already censoring. Like it's up to Tether to break before a real competitor takes a sizable share. And I've always thought like the argument then is like, how quickly does that happen? And if it doesn't happen in the next 5 years, like, do we just move to a Bitcoin standard? And then you've just been trying to build fiat tools in a Bitcoin world.
Well, that's why I think the beauty of this implementation within Mint, it's why it's so beautiful, because it's just basically a value add feature. That's not the only reason why you would run a Mint, right? Like it's just another option, a value add option that you can give your users. And so you're not wholly dependent on the dollar sustaining itself to to run them in or something like that. You can offer other services. I don't know. It's really exciting to me. I think I would not be surprised if censorship on Tether escalates from here, considering all the headlines that have come out over the last year, onboarding the FBI, the Secret Service, partnering with Chainalysis. It seems like Tether, while I think their intentions out of the gates were pure and very aligned with the cypherpunk ethos, I think they've gotten too big to evade the state. It seems like they're being either folded into state operations.
I mean, you can point to exactly who runs it, right?
Yeah.
That seems like a risky position to be in.
Yeah, I mean, but like, I've never used Tether. I've never recommended anyone use Tether. I think
We've been consistent. We've been consistent about that for 6 years now.
But like, anyone who's been betting against them, like they've they keep growing and they're just raking in money.
Yeah, and it's weird because again, we've been consistent about Tether specifically over the 6 years, and I feel like, correct me if I'm wrong, Matt, the message has been like they're doing something that's pretty cool, operating this gray market, served a market need for many years now, but yeah, the cruise missile risk hasn't happened yet, and would not recommend holding it for long periods of time. Have never used it myself personally.
I mean, they have frozen funds, right? And obviously, you always have rug risk, and you always have the cruise missile risk, which is, essentially the U.S. government shutting them down. But it can't be ignored that many people, particularly in the developing world, who have demand for dollars that the traditional financial system doesn't give them access to, really like using Tether, and the numbers prove it. They do use it, and particularly, we haven't really seen any competitors, particularly like the heavily regulated competitors coming out of Wall Street, ever really bite into this essentially like this global gray market money that's interoperable with everything.
You guys like conspiracy theories?
I mean, Marty does.
Is that
I dabble
Dabble.
every once in a while.
All right, so check it out. They're not going to shut them down because they're going to let them grow large and unavoidable, so that they have a large percentage of users on their platform. And they can just do that on their own time. Let them grow nice and big, and then we just regulate, or just
It's the CBDC.
yeah. We just
Yeah,
thanks for
it's the
making that.
meme.
We will run this now.
It's the meme of like the kid holding the ball and the other kid, and he's like, "This is my ball," and the kid takes it. It's like, "No, this is my ball." That's what's gonna happen with Tether in the US dollar. Yeah, I made this.
I made this.
No, you're thinking of the one where he like drags him away. There's another one where it's like, "This is mine," and then he takes it. He's like, "No, this is mine now." That's the U.S. government and Tether. That's and again, I have a lot of respect for the people at Tether, Palo, and others, but I just think they've gotten to the point where it's the inevitable conclusion of their business, and it's just the inevitable conclusion of any business that operates in a centralized fashion, like they've had to. No,
Okay.
I made this. This is not the one I'm thinking of, but
That's the one I'm talking about. I made this.
I'm talking about the one where like the monster
He's got
comes.
the
Where you
ball.
see,
Pull that up, Logan. Pull that up. Oh, Logan, you rugged us. Yeah, see? I made this. You made this? I made this.
Yeah.
And see, he's got the ball and everything. I think you mixed up your memes.
Yeah, like
This one
thanks.
happens to be what, New York Times and OpenAI?
this is the one I'm talking about, Logan.
Why did you send me this format?
I'm sorry. This is what I'm talking about. This is what's gonna happen.
Oh, yeah, I see. I know this one. Did you see Clark enlarged his mempool finally?
He did. I have that on my mind list to bring up. Bullying works.
Huge congratulations, Clark. Do you notice he did it right before Rabbit Hole Recap too? You know,
Yeah.
he had the crunch.
It is no longer a teeny weeny mempool. It is a well endowed mempool.
Bullying
Still
works.
smaller than Wizzes.
We gave him some honey though.
Still smaller than Wizzes.
Both Marty and I zapped him for it. So
Yes.
we hit him with the stick and then we gave him some honey afterwards.
Yeah.
It's
Wizz's
still smaller
mempool.
than Wizz's.
Wizz's mempool, 155,000 transactions. Clark's mempool, can't find it here. 92,000.
No matter how I configure my node, I can't get my self-hosted mempool space, my mempool instance to show as many transactions as mempool space. It's always just shy. I'm working on it.
Yeah.
I mean, one of the topics I wanted to bring up was IBEX is the latest company to pull out of the U.S. market. Another one bites the dust.
Another one bites the dust. I mean, they're not dead, but they pulled out of America.
They're dead to Americans.
No, we're just behind the glass prison wall. We can only interact with them between this wall. Hey, we put our hands up to the glass and compare hands, but we can't touch each other. That's where we're at. What do you think, Matt? Chilling effect overblown? Not the concept of the chilling effect. It's a reaction to the chilling effect overblown.
You know, I think it's easy for people to chirp if they're not in the hot seat.
Yeah. Agreed. Trying to think what else we got here. Scott, you got any topics in your head you want to bring up?
Just reading through your amazing list of ride or die freaks. No,
The Nostr live chat's pretty fucking cool, right?
it is pretty cool, right? I'm just
You see how they can zap in line?
yeah, this is pretty badass. Just been reading through this. It's a good deal.
Thank you, Ride or Dies. We appreciate you.
Speaking of which, I mean, you guys know in zap.stream you can zap us. It's been.
Did the zaps work? You should test them.
Yeah, test them out. Make sure they work.
And if I refresh it, it'll show the names better.
Do you think miners will have to offer more products other than hash? Like that bathhouse in Brooklyn. Interesting. I think so.
Is the bathhouse offering happy endings still? You get hash and a happy ending?
Together at last. It can be a little disappointing sometimes. They were talking about last night how the mining business is pretty hard. It's pretty hard. So
I think it's the second most difficult business in the world after crab fishing.
It is the most competitive business.
So we got to combine them.
Next season of Deadliest Catch is going to be like Bitcoin miners.
Yeah. Yes. We got a Bitcoin mine. We're crab fishermen. We do it all.
It is such a brutal business. Incredibly competitive. And I think, I think that's one of the reasons Bitaxe is so cool, because I think we're close to this era where it's every boiler has a Bitcoin miner that's using waste heat for the boilers and stuff. I think it's going to be, I don't know how soon that is. But we're closer than we've ever been before.
The miners make what's called low grade heat. So it's not boiling water.
Yeah.
But there's no reason it can't do that.
Where you don't have to, a hot water boiler, the miner doesn't have to get it to the top temperature. It just needs to subsidize it.
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
Just
and also you don't want boiling water coming out of your shower. It's supposed to be less than that.
Yeah, there's a bunch of people who are doing this, who are making, they're taking off the shelf hash boards and putting them in immersion tanks that are thermally coupled to hot water heaters.
Yeah, Coin Heated Coinheated has like he has his pool in the winter that's like 90 degrees.
It's so
It's
rad.
like 10 degrees outside, and his pool is 90 degrees in Fahrenheit in American temperatures.
Well, we had last time I was
Pretty
here,
cool.
it was in Nashville for the snowpocalypse,
Yeah,
and we had a hot tub
outside
out
yeah.
in front, and it was
Yeah.
steaming. It was like well, how hot can we make this hot tub? Like, what can we tolerate? Just go all the way.
Pretty fucking cool. I mean, I think like what year will it be when you can walk into Home Depot and just like there's a boiler there that has the ASIC built into it?
Well, with that being said, this is something I'm very interested in from the 1031 perspective. I'm looking for like an HVAC, somebody in the HVAC industry, in the water boiler industry, like build this product.
I mean, there's a couple companies trying. I just think it's a little bit early still.
Yeah.
And like you don't want your boiler to like get obsolete in a couple of years. Like it needs it needs to be a 10-year purchase. Like a good boiler should be at least a 10-year purchase.
Yeah. And I think the point you made earlier is like a good dipping of the toes way to begin building out a product line that would inevitably end up in the 10-year, which is recognizing that you don't need to heat all of the water. You just need to get it to a certain point.
Yeah, but with the 10-year timeline, it's more like, does hash rate, like we need hash rate to like leave its exponential path. Like right now, it just goes straight up. And so like your hardware gets it gets obsolete slower than it ever has before. Like we saw the S9s.
Some are still profitable.
Yeah, for almost a decade, which is crazy. But like we're still not quite there yet, but we're getting closer. I think in the meantime, what could be cool is, and we probably will only see this come out of, because the margins are so tight, it's hard to imagine like a profitable business doing this. So maybe it starts in the open source side. But like if you had an easy way to not replace the boiler or a lot of heaters in Europe and around the world are electric heat already. They're just electric heaters. If you had a way of like pulling out the hash board and just replacing it, but the rest of the unit stayed there, that could kind of compensate for it maybe.
Yeah, I mean we've essentially standardized on that S19 form factor hash boards. They're mechanically identical. So yeah, I mean you can imagine that like, okay, this thing isn't making me as much sats anymore, so you upgrade it with a heating element kind of thing that has the.
You don't upgrade all the hardware; you just slide it out and put it in the new.
Yeah, or
the more efficient, whatever.
If the hardware if it wasn't so expensive, because a lot of the heat bit and stuff, I think they try and do this thing where they're subsidizing the initial purchase price of the heater,
and then they take a cut.
By taking a cut, right? Which, if it was just cheaper hardware to begin with, then that wouldn't be necessary, and you wouldn't be quite as tied to the like hash price.
Yeah.
For your heater, so it'd be like, I don't know, it's not making me as much anymore, but I don't know, it's all like I'm in the black already. So
yeah, I still think it's a little bit early. There is something interesting there in terms of like landlords as customers that are installing the heaters rather than the actually end user being the customer. Where like the landlord installs it and then takes a cut of everyone's heater's revenue. And then the company also takes a cut. There might be something there, but like it's just the machines go obsolete too quick. The margins are already incredibly tight in Bitcoin mining, and then the company needs to take their own margin to be a profitable business.
Yeah,
and then actual production of the chips is incredibly centralized. So it's hard to find an edge on that side. And so it's just still, I feel like we'll get there eventually. But it's hard to imagine that future today, especially from like a profitable business point of view. A little bit less so if it comes out of something like Bitaxe where it's open source and,
novelty.
There's no margins there. Scott's a little bit. I was a little bit mean to Scott last night.
No, it was all good. It was all
Don't
good.
be mean.
That's why he keeps saying novelty. I own a Bitaxe now, and I'm very happy that OpenSats is contributing, but
likewise.
But
I don't think. Having said that, I don't think Bitaxe, in its current form, like just solves mining centralization.
To the point you two were just discussing, I was looking up. He doesn't have it on his site, but that was one of the charts that Matthew brought up yesterday on TFTC. Is a power law regression of hash rate, and it is sort of following this power law where it's reaching a more stable sort of level. Obviously, it's going up exponentially now, but if you do like a log regression, it seems like we are getting to the point. Like it's going to happen with the price. It'll probably happen with hash rate as well, where you'll have these relatively stable periods. We don't have like 10 to 100 X's.
Do you still think that Bitcoin energy consumption globally will be less than 1%?
No, that wasn't the bet. We'll be closer to 1% or 50%.
Yeah.
I said closer to 1%.
You said under 1%.
No, I didn't. Yeah, I did.
It's on the record.
It is on the record, so I can't.
Have you changed your mind? Has your opinion evolved on the matter? You can change your mind. You don't have to be right about everything, Marty.
I think my mind is certainly more malleable now. I still don't think it'll be close to 50%. More than 1%. Maybe between 1% and 10%.
Oh, it's increased.
It has increased.
It's increased. It's trending in the right direction.
It has. Speaking of conspiracy theories, Logan, pull it up. Did you guys see this? What do you know about Satanists?
Oh my God.
What is that?
King Charles. King Charles is, what do you call these things, Logan?
You're on the TV.
What thing?
The painting. What is the painting? The portrait. He had his portrait unveiled earlier this week, and if you do
that was so mean to Marty. A painting?
Portrait?
Oh wait, no, go up. We'll go up one.
This is the original.
What does the community note say?
This is community noted.
What does the community note say?
It's been digitally altered.
Well, that's not the one I shared. The one up has not
one.
been. And as you can see, there's like a Bama Fett in the middle, the devil. And if you know anything about Satanists, they have to tell you.
Did he commission this?
Yes, he unveiled it himself too.
Why would he do that?
I went and flipped it the other way.
Because this is what Satanists
and
have to
there's
do.
a rat there.
They have to tell you.
It's like a possum or something.
Satanists have to tell you that they're Satanist to avoid karma.
Is that a rule?
Yes, within the Satanism.
Well, it makes it pretty easy to identify them then.
Yeah. I mean, it's pretty blatant right there.
Well, I don't have much love for the royal family.
Yeah.
It's probably as close to zero as it could be.
Just like click engagement bait here. It's just like, check out the royal family.
Yeah. I mean, yeah.
You can see the devil right there. Bama Fett.
Do you think he asked his publicist before he unveiled it? He's like, I think this is going to be really a good idea. I need to connect with the youth.
Yeah.
His publicist was like, you got to
bad
publish
enough
it.
as the
It's
original.
like,
Wait, is this the original?
Yeah. This is the original.
So what's the double thing? Is the double
you mirror the original. So look at the right half of this picture. If you just mirror it, it pulls a full depiction of the devil.
Oh, okay. So the double isn't the original.
No.
Got it.
It's a reflection of the original.
But this already looks like a Dark Souls villain or something.
Is it true that Elon he disabled community notes on his own tweets?
I have no idea.
Have you seen community notes on any of his tweets lately?
No. I mean, I'm not like avidly following Elon's
You don't have
tweets.
notifications on?
No.
No.
Nostr's been popping though.
No. Yeah, we just got Lola on there again. That's good to see.
Speaking of Lola, I've seen Seth on privacy. Obviously, everybody's on edge right now. And walking through the worst case scenarios, I would like to say to everybody, These blows should be expected. They're very chilling. They're very scary. We got this, though. Got to work, focus. All this tumult, these headwinds should be expected. I think how we react to them will say a lot and will dictate how all this plays out in the coming years.
That's a pretty important point. We got this, right? I think that we have a significantly better chance than, was it 3% success rate?
Matt Corallo, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, no. I mean, Matt is just... Hey, Marty, you should have pushed back more on that interview.
I said it, like, I was not expecting him to be like, we should change the proof of work. And I haven't heard it in 7 years. And I was like thinking through it. And I did at the end. I was like, wait, I think it would actually lead to more centralization. But it's not like something we prepped for. He's like, I'm going to talk about changing the proof of work. It was like thrust on me in the middle of a conversation.
I mean, dude, but you're a professional podcaster. Like, you should do better.
Maybe they'll take me off the PodConf approved list now.
Look, I think I agree. I think we got this, but like it comes down to individuals doing the hard things.
Yeah.
Like it's people. You know, Michael Saylor likes to say there's 100 million plus Bitcoiners. There's way less people than that doing the hard things, and we need more people to do the hard things. And shout out to everyone listening to this that is doing the hard things. You know who you are, and you're appreciated. Because without the people standing up, there is no movement. Like it's easy to just think of it as a tech project, but Bitcoin is ultimately a movement of individuals.
If not you, then who?
Exactly. I thought this was cool. I think just in general, all the developments in the cashew space are fucking awesome. And it was really cool. Gladstein and I were being nostalgic over the original Charming Ecash bounty that was funded by Strike, custodied by HRF, and the OpenSats board dictated who won it. And Callie won it, and that was 18 months ago. It was like in a month and a half, he like whipped together this proof of concept.
Did he win the whole thing or just half the bounty?
I think he won the whole thing. And then the other bounty that was paid out was to JB55, Will, lead maintainer of Damus, and he got half his bounty.
That's right.
And in those 18 months, like Nostr is turning into like this just amazing open source protocol. And so is Cashew. And it's only been 18 months. Pretty fucking crazy looking back on it. But the reason I bring it up is because we talked about Nifty's Bitcoin Plus Plus event that happened in Austin just recently, and she's doing another one in October 10th through 12th in Berlin, and it's going to be focused on Charming Ecash and Cashew, which is pretty exciting. I think that's fucking dope. To have a whole event focused on developing on Ecash.
Yeah, it seems like, I don't know if it's coincidence, but it seems like despite a lot of people acting fearful and all that, there like a lot of stuff happening on Cashew. Again, this could just be a coincidence, but I saw a lot of activity around silent payments this week. People pushing code and products enabling silent payments, which is cool to see. Didn't Core just merge in silent payments, or was it silent BIP 47 something BIP 47 or BIP 47 related?
Well, BIP 47 is not silent payments.
No, but it's a similar concept, right?
I don't know, Marty. You brought it up. What do they do?
It's similar to Paynims, where they enable you
Don't look at me.
to receive Bitcoin with like a static.
News to me.
You're the privacy nut. Like, I thought you'd be on top of this.
You know,
Let's refresh ourselves on silent payments.
Why don't you find out what you just reported on? I don't know what you just reported on. I know Seed Signer is implementing silent payments. Did you get confused with that?
No, there's Silentium too, which is an email.
Is it what?
An email.
What does that mean, Marty?
I completely just. This is the first time I've drank on Rabbit Hole Recap in a while. It's not on
You're
email.
having a single beer. Silentium, which is an email. What does that mean?
No, it's a wallet. It's a wallet that implemented silent payments. Silent payments.
Where does email come into it? Does it have email?
No, I don't know where email came from in my brain. I think I literally was on my email client and subconsciously injected email into the sentence. So yeah, it's similar to Paynims, where you have a static address that you can.
But wait. Does the Bitcoin Core implement silent payments?
I forget. We talked about it last week.
Well, what's kind of cool about silent payments is it looks like a regular address, is my understanding.
Yeah.
So like it can fall back on if the payer doesn't support silent payments, it just goes to the regular address.
Yeah, it's privacy preserving.
Otherwise, it doesn't reuse the same address. Obviously, if you post a Bitcoin address online and a bunch of people pay to it, a regular Bitcoin address, all of those transactions are linked together. This is what we saw during the Canadian truckers. Every on-chain donation was inherently linked together. But yeah.
Yeah, why not call them static addresses? Silent payments is confusing. I don't get it.
Do you see Yael? I'm sorry for mispronouncing your name. I definitely pronounced it wrong. He posted silentpayments.xyz. Supposedly stuff for privacy. But why don't you click that link? Logan, pull up silentpayments.xyz. I don't. Me and Scott don't have a computer in front of us. What's over there?
Privacy preserving static addresses.
Okay. Well, there you can learn more about silent payments at silentpayments.xyz, freaks. We'll talk about it at length as people start implementing it. Hopefully.
The point being, I know everybody's scared. I don't know if everybody's scared, but I know people are spooked by everything that's been going on. But again, I think pushing forward, keep iterating, keep building on Cashew, Vediment, implementing silent payments. We'll do a deeper dive to better articulate exactly what they are for future episodes. But we got this. We got this.
Headed up to Montreal tomorrow, Canadian Bitcoin conference.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
You've been trying to get me up there.
There's
sorry, freaks.
I'm not going to Same. I'm not going to Canada. I've made the decision. That's the.
Well, like ever?
I don't think so. Yeah, it's like
it's pretty cold, right?
It's not even that it's cold. It's just like it's pure communist.
I've never been before. I have a friend who's in a band and didn't let him in. We'll see what happens.
Wait, why didn't they let him in? Because he was in a band?
No, he was in a band and they were going there to tour, and they're just one of the guys was like, nope. Can't go.
Why not? Did they give him a reason?
Nope.
Last time I went to Canada, like the guy looked up my information. He's like, "Why haven't you been here in such a long time? Like, you should come more often."
Really?
Yeah.
It's like, welcome, man.
It really caught me
Glad
off
you're here,
guard.
buddy. That's awesome.
It was like the last thing I expected the border guard to say.
I've been to Canada once.
I've been to Canada multiple times.
Wow.
Never
been.
I mean, it's for a long time. It was I don't even think you might have even needed a passport to travel over there. I mean, I'm from New York, so you could just drive up to the top of the state.
It's just like around the corner.
Yeah.
They're having 2 Bitaxe building workshops. like soldering together a
That's
Bitaxe.
pretty cool.
Both of them sold out, but all the parts are there. They got the soldering equipment. Come away, hopefully, if you pay attention, I guess, with a working Bitaxe. But like, people are going nuts for this in Canada.
That's awesome, dude. It must be cool seeing the project really blossom. And it's still early days. It's like
It's early days.
It's not even inning number 1. It's the day before the game.
And what's cool is I heard about this from someone else. The guy who's putting it on, he didn't even talk to me. He's just like, I'm going to do this, put it all together.
Well, that's the cool part. He doesn't need your permission.
He doesn't need my permission.
Yeah.
There's nothing I can do about it.
Like, stay humble, Scott.
And finally, I was like, hey, man.
Why should you hear about it?
Can I get a ticket? I want to come up there.
Can I get a ticket? Did you pay for a ticket? Or
I got comped a ticket. This is the first time it's ever happened.
he should have charged you. Just
You made it.
Yeah, right. Yeah, right. Rockstar now.
You made it. Getting conference tickets.
Yeah.
Yeah.
International prestige.
Montreal is a beautiful city. That's the only place I've been to. Canada. Went for a bachelor party. Incredible experience when I was there. Terrible experience on the way back. I had to stay in Saskatchewan for a night because my flight got delayed. I had a connecting flight in Saskatchewan and had to stay in some random ass hotel.
Saskatchewan.
It wasn't good.
Yeah, it wasn't fun. Shout out to all of our Canadian listeners.
In Saskatchewan.
We actually, I mean, like, Canada's not a big country in population, and they definitely punch way above their weight per capita in terms of Bitcoin.
Yeah, I mean, shout out to the dope Canadian Bitcoiners. Francis, MVK.
You're going to start naming them all?
Bradley, all of them, yeah. Who else is up there?
BTC Sessions.
BTC Sessions, Ben.
I mean, like, I would... How many years have we done this? Like, I would never start listing. Like, you're on your own. Keep going. Anyone else?
Justin Trudeau. He's really pushed a lot of people towards Bitcoin.
Huge Bitcoiner.
Wait, shout out to Justin Trudeau. Reason I got on Tucker Carlson is because him and his administration shut down people's bank accounts, and I got the opportunity to talk with Tucker Carlson for 90 seconds about
He's doing the hard work out there.
How Bitcoin can fix this. The Cuban nipple crisis is real, freaks. Don't ever forget. Your president has brown nipples, and he's pretending to be French Canadian. Doesn't compute.
Those pictures are like modified, right?
No.
Exactly like Castro.
Did you see the way Fidel Castro would rub Justin Trudeau's mom's shoulders when they would meet up?
That's crazy.
That's somebody.
I mean, there's crazier things. Like, it's not that crazy.
So,
the King of England putting Bamafet pictures in his portrait now.
Had several comments in Nostr calling out your pronunciation there.
A Bamafet?
Baphomet.
Baphomet. My bad. Spoon is I'm a little dyslexic, freaks. I'm sorry.
What else do we have? Is there anything else?
The bank runs continue.
I feel like there's something big where...
At least Australia is worse.
Yeah, that's like your argument earlier. It's like, oh, it's better than the state lottery. You know?
Australia, they're
welcome to Canada. At least Australia is worse.
They're like using people's phones and searching them.
What, Australia?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, they did the TikTok censorship charts or whatever.
Okay.
And Australia is number one.
Number one.
Like, in terms of amount of TikToks that they've requested to be censored. They want to KYC the whole internet. I mean, a lot of these Western governments want to and the Eastern government, all the governments want to KYC the internet.
But they can't because it's so decentralized and distributed.
I mean, they're doing a pretty good job of it.
I mean, it helps when we've all centralized on Facebook and TikTok. I mean, that sort of narrows the window of who you have to regulate.
I mean, look. I don't. Marty puts me in the spot because he's like one of the largest porn influencers in Bitcoin.
Jesus fucking Christ.
Big anti-porn guy, like talks about it all the fucking time.
Email.
And I'm not like
I haven't mentioned that I was anti-porn in months. You're the one who always brings it up.
I'm having a conversation with Scott right now.
Okay.
And I am not a pro porn guy by any means.
You're
Like
the one who always
Texas,
brings it up.
Texas, right now has a bill on the books that like if you go to a porn site, like you have to be KYC to go on a porn site.
A friend told me that my state also has that.
Yeah.
That you have to upload your ID.
Yeah.
I heard from someone.
That's pretty crazy.
That's ridiculous.
Yeah.
Don't watch porn, kids. Don't put your like if you had any other reason not to watch porn, not only is it rotting your brain and terrible, don't KYC yourself to the porn companies.
Isn't there? There's got to be some AI startup solution for this, though, right?
What do you mean? What AI doesn't have to solve everything?
Yeah, I mean, you're gonna be able to. You're gonna be. I mean, with the way it's going, you're gonna be able to like produce porn on your own GPU if you want to.
That's true, huh? I don't have to. My friend doesn't have to go to a website to look at it. They can just AI.
You prompt it.
Yeah.
Prompt the porn you want to see in the world.
Like, there's going to be attempts to like KYC all AI tools, right?
Ooh, WorldCoin. It's the whole idea of WorldCoin, right?
I saw that thing. I held it.
Did you see Ivan's all caps zap? Marty Bent, largest and most prolific porn influencer on the web.
Don't appreciate that, Ivan. Or Matt.
And then the next one, all caps, come rocket. Oh, we need to reach shout outs.
Aha. Look at you.
I remember because of come rocket.
That would have been bad.
One of our ride or die freaks, like he does a boost almost every week. Is his username is come rocket.
Come rocket.
What kind of show is this?
Top 4 boosts from central banks runs continue. Rabbit hole recap 304. You're going to like this one, Matt. From @Paez, boosted 100,000 sats. Odell is the most honest and gangsta motherfucker I've listened to and read since I discovered Bitcoin. Fuck Swan and anyone who's got shit to say about Odell. Dirty Jersey got Odell's back. LFG.
Well, that got aggressive, but I appreciate you, freak.
Did get aggressive. Paez, thank you for the sats. @Eric99 boosted 50,000 sats.
Yeah, that's one. How much they?
How many sats did he send?
100,000.
Thank you.
Six figure boost. Eric99 boosted 50,000 sats. Minneapolis, Minnesota, Bitcoin meetup May 21st. So that is in 5 days at O'Shaughnessy Distillery. Starts at 6 p.m. All are welcome. Stay humble. Stack sats.
Great advice. And also, I heard that distillery is fucking dope, and I need to make it up there.
Same. We need to do a live rabbit hole recap there at some point. @NatGas Immersion boosted 50,000 sats. Thank you. Thank you, NatGas Immersion.
You just said thank you?
Yes.
What a freak. Appreciate you. You're welcome.
At last but not least, @Ben Justman, the proprietor of Painting Lane.
Are you ever going to drink it?
Yeah, I'm going to drink. I told you, I'm aging it.
I'm aging.
10,000 sats. All my Nostr apps just got rerouted to RHR for Penny Lane wine ads. I've never felt more motivated to use Nostr. Love you guys. Love you, Ben. And I actually hadn't read the boost before pulling up the Penny Lane bottle, so that was not.
We're not supposed to read ads for boosts, but we'll make
an exception.
Yeah, it's good wine. Have you tried it, or do you just have a closed bottle?
I just have a closed bottle.
You've never tried it?
Not yet. I cannot tell a lie. I have not yet.
It's pretty good.
I'm aging it.
I drank it at his winery. Pretty cool experience.
That is a pretty cool experience.
Yeah, it's in this
out of a barrel?
No, out of a bottle.
Not out of a glass.
But it was like in the winery. No, out of the glass.
Okay, all right.
That came out of a bottle.
Nice.
That was previously in a barrel. It's funny how that works.
Soup to nuts.
But yeah, he lives in a beautiful part of Colorado. Pretty cool.
I think there's a lot of beautiful parts of Colorado.
There are. It's a really deep, profound comment that Marty just made. You notice?
I agree. Colorado, so beautiful.
Well, that's why I didn't want to dox where he lived, and it doesn't really dox him.
No, it doesn't. All right, we got to wrap up. I got to do a TFTC episode with the Wave League team here in 25 minutes. Wave League.
Yeah, you pronounced it a little bit weird. I was just being
The
the Weave League. The Weave League team. Scott, final thoughts. Thanks for joining us.
Oh my gosh. Thanks for having me. Is that a good final thought?
Yeah, it's pretty good.
Thanks. I was thinking about that one for a while.
Consider building a Bitaxe. Contribute to the project.
Yeah.
Consider
How's
it.
that?
Bitax.org. You can go there. You can build it yourself. You can find someone to sell it to you. You can hack on it. It's all there.
Axe with an E.
Yeah.
Bit
Axe.
AXE.
Like pickaxe, like you might use to like do like mining.
But a
in the dirt.
Bitaxe.
Yeah.
Let's fucking go. Love you, Marty. Stay humble, stack sets.
Don't end it yet, Logan. I did have one more thing I want to mention. They're pushing stable coins hard. Just be aware. Paul Ryan's talking about it. They're going to try and push stable coins on the market.
Play the video.
It's in the show notes, Logan.
Who's pushing stablecoin?
Which video?
I thought I put it
Who's
in.
pushing stable? You
didn't
can't just
send
like
me
drop
shit.
that bomb on us.
Well, you like went straight into the ending segue.
forgot.
And I had one more topic. He said, "What else should we talk about?" And I said,
I
"Paul
forgot
Ryan
about-
talking about stable coins."
Is he still in government?
No, he's in the private sector now, but
Does he work for Tether now?
I don't think so.
You can't just like.
You're the one who messed this up. You said, "Do you have anything else to talk about?" I said, "Yes, I do." Then you said, "Read the boost." And you went straight into the ending segue.
I thought it was. We got his final thoughts, but like you can't just like drop that bomb. You can't report on like half finished news stories.
It's
you
not
gotta
half finished.
You got to finish. Okay, let's play the.
Now you're
clip.
going to be angry because it's 2 minutes. I was trying to describe it. And you
so
said, pull up
old.
the video.
I guess the question is, what could you do now, knowing we have debt problems in the future? I think there's a couple of things Congress could do. They're not, but maybe they'll get something done. I think stablecoin legislation would be a good step in the right direction. That could be helpful. That could be done this year, but I don't see anything other than that on the horizon.
Let's talk about stablecoin, because I've heard you say that actually getting legislation on that could help treasury auctions. And when you said it, I said, what's the connection there? Take our audience through that connection.
Yeah, so stable coins, which are digital private sector dollar-backed currencies, it's not crypto because it's tethered to the U.S. dollar. They have to have dollar-backed assets. They have to have treasuries or cash to back those stable coins. There's not a law that governs these right now, so they aren't really deployed. But if you actually have a law, which Patrick McHenry and Chair Waters, Maxine Waters and Patrick McHenry are putting a deal together. Schumer is in talks with them. I think there's a reasonable chance they could get a deal on stablecoin legislation. That means you have a legal framework in which you have stablecoins deployed. You'd go from a couple $100 billion of stablecoins to, maybe trillions. Right now, stablecoins are like the 16th largest buyer of bonds, bills, and notes among all sovereigns. If you actually regulate stablecoins, have them deployed, that does two things. That gets the U.S. dollar more deeply ingrained in the oncoming digitization of currencies. That's a good thing. And you create new consumers' demand for our bonds because they have to have those to back up the stablecoins. So more demand for treasuries, more use of a digital dollar throughout the system to help better entrench the dollar. It's a win-win situation for America. I think it's a no-brainer. I'm hopeful, cautiously optimistic Congress might do that this year still. There are good talks happening. And that's one thing you could do on the margin to try and, improve demand for our bonds and improve dollar.
Yeah. Stable coins are needed to save the treasury market.
It feels like a CBDC argument.
Yeah, exactly.
I feel bad that I said conspiracy theory.
I mean, that's just he just
said
it. He said the quiet part out loud.
Yeah. Wow. Okay, there we go. Not a theory.
Okay, great rip. Love you, Marty. Stay humble, stack sets.